a high school cheerleader, a well-respected coach, and a secret relationship that no one saw coming. On the surface, everything seemed normal. He was a mentor, a figure of authority, and she was a star student, admired by her peers. But beneath the facade of trust and respect, something far more dangerous was quietly taking shape. A secret affair between coach and cheerleader, hidden from the world, would set off a chain of events no one could have predicted. When the cheerleader discovers a devastating diagnosis, one that would change her life forever, the situation escalates. Then came the shock of an unexpected pregnancy, the fallout from it, and the tension that built between two lives now forever intertwined. But nothing could prepare anyone for what would happen next. In the blink of an eye, a young life was lost. A murder. A life ripped away. Was this a crime of passion, a desperate act driven by betrayal, or was there something darker at play? What led to this tragic outcome? How did a hidden affair, a deadly diagnosis, and a single moment of violence tear apart the lives of those involved? Stay with us, because the shocking truth will unravel before your eyes, and you may never look at this case the same way again. Welcome to True Crime Unseen, where we hunt through into the darkest corners of human nature and uncover the most chilling true crime stories. Thank you, my viewer, and most especially my subscribers for your support. Your encouragement helps us share true crime stories. Please subscribe if you haven't already. In a small, quiet town where everyone knew everyone else's business, there was a high school that served as the heartbeat of the community. The halls were filled with students bustling to classes. The gymnasium echoed with the sounds of pep rallies, and the football field was where local legends were made. But in the shadows of this seemingly idyllic town, two lives were about to collide in a way that would forever alter the course of their futures. First, there was the coach, a man who had spent years cultivating a reputation as a devoted mentor and an upstanding figure within the community. His name was spoken with respect. He was the kind of man who seemed to have it all: steady career, family, and a passion for coaching. To his players and students, he was more than just a coach. He was a role model, someone they looked up to, someone they trusted. But like many people, the coach had a side to him that few knew. Behind closed doors, he was wrestling with his own demons, some of which would later lead to his undoing. And then there was the cheerleader, bright, talented, and full of ambition. To those who knew her, she was the epitome of promise. A star on the cheerleading squad, she had big dreams of going to college, of making a name for herself outside of the small town that she'd grown up in. But her personal life, the one that no one could have guessed at, was far more complicated than anyone could have imagined. Behind the cheerleader's smile and accolades was a girl searching for validation, a girl looking for something she couldn't quite put into words. When she met the coach, it was under the guise of a professional relationship, coaching and mentoring, nothing more. But the lines between professional and personal began to blur. At first, it was small moments, shared glances, conversations that lasted a little too long after practice, an occasional text message that seemed more like a friendly gesture than anything else. In the beginning, neither of them could have foreseen what would happen next. But what started as a simple connection, innocent even in its early stages, would soon grow into something that both would regret. The relationship remained a secret, hidden from prying eyes. No one suspected that something was amiss, and why would they? On the surface, the coach was still the man everyone looked up to, and the cheerleader, still the girl with everything ahead of her. But as the relationship progressed, it began to take on a darker tone. And then came the turning point, the moment when everything changed. The cheerleader learned something that no one should ever have to face: a devastating health diagnosis. It wasn't just any diagnosis. It was something that would force her to confront her own mortality to deal with a reality she wasn't prepared for. HIV, a disease that carried with it more than just physical implications. It carried with it shame, fear, and a future that now seemed uncertain. But how had she contracted it? The only answer was a secret she had been keeping from the world: her relationship with the coach. At first she thought about it in silence. She couldn't bring herself to tell anyone. Not her friends, not her family, not even the coach. But as the weight of the diagnosis began to take its toll, she couldn't ignore it any longer. And then, just when she thought things couldn't get worse, the news came that she was pregnant. The world she had built for herself, the one where everything was under control, came crashing down. The unplanned pregnancy, coupled with the HIV diagnosis, created a storm that the cheerleader wasn't ready to weather. But this wasn't just her problem. The coach, too, was now trapped in a web of consequences that he couldn't escape. He had been a part of this, willingly or not. And as the two of them faced the repercussions of their actions, their lives became increasingly entangled in a way that neither could predict. The tragedy would not come in the form of a simple mistake, nor would it come from an external threat. No, it would come from within their own lives, driven by desperation, fear, and the weight of their decisions. As the tension between the cheerleader and the coach continued to build, so too did the pressure to conceal their secrets. And just when it seemed like the walls were closing in, the unthinkable happened. What started as an affair, a secret kept from the world, soon exploded into a life-shattering series of events. The combination of forbidden love, a life-altering disease, an unplanned pregnancy, and the crushing guilt that followed would lead to a moment of violence no one could have imagined. This was no longer just a story of a forbidden relationship. It was a tale of betrayal, fear, and the destruction of two lives that had been so carefully constructed in the public eye. What began as a secret would soon be exposed, and the results would be more devastating than anyone could have ever foreseen. This is where the story takes a tragic turn, as the relationship between the coach and the cheerleader, once seen as a simple love affair, becomes the catalyst for a horrifying tragedy. It started as an innocent bond. At first, there was nothing unusual about the way the coach and the cheerleader interacted. He was a popular figure, admired by the students and faculty alike for his dedication to the team. He had been coaching for years, helping students push their limits on the field, while guiding them through the stresses of teenage life. She was a standout cheerleader, vibrant, energetic, and driven to succeed. As a rising star in the cheerleading squad, she often sought guidance and encouragement from him, and he, in turn, took a special interest in her progress. Over time, their interactions grew more personal. What began as casual advice and mentorship turned into private conversations after practice. He listened intently to her troubles, the challenges of high school life, and the pressure she faced to be perfect, on the field, in the classroom, and at home. She admired his wisdom and the way he seemed to understand her. He, on the other hand, appreciated her dedication and strength, her ambition and desire to escape the confines of a small town. It didn't take long before they started spending more time together, initially under the pretense of extra coaching sessions, but gradually their connection grew more intimate. Neither was prepared for the emotional bond that was slowly forming between them. They started sharing more personal stories, little by little. Their casual moments became secret. Their innocent meetings became moments of quiet attraction. The chemistry between them was undeniable, and though the signs were there for anyone paying attention, no one suspected the depth of their relationship. It was subtle at first, an extra touch here, an intense gaze there, but the more time they spent together, the more their relationship blurred the line between professional and personal. As the relationship deepened, the warning signs were ignored by those around them. The coach's late-night phone calls to her, The way they would disappear together after practice, the secret smiles exchanged in public, all of it went unnoticed or was written off as harmless, as innocent as the bond between any teacher and student. Friends of the cheerleader might have suspected something, but were either too afraid to ask or chose not to believe that someone they trusted so much could be capable of crossing such a line. Her peers chalked up her closeness with the coach as a mentor-mentee dynamic, not understanding the complexities that were unfolding just beneath the surface. But as their secret relationship grew, so did the risks. There was an unspoken agreement between them. They both had lives outside of this relationship, and they would keep it that way. However, with secrets comes danger, and with danger, consequences. One of those consequences arrived unexpectedly, and it would be a life-changing revelation. The cheerleader, after a series of unexplained health issues, went to see a doctor. What she didn't know at the time was that the test results would uncover a shocking truth. The coach had been hiding a secret that had been eating away at him for months, if not years. He was HIV positive. The news struck the cheerleader like a hammer, and it sent her world into a tailspin. She had trusted him with her body, her emotions, and her future. And now, the consequences were unfathomable. She had no way of knowing how long he had been carrying the virus or whether he had been infected before their relationship began. But what made the situation even more horrifying was the realization that she, too, might be infected. And she was terrified. The coach, who had lived with the secret of his HIV status for years, had never disclosed it to her. His fear of rejection and his overwhelming desire to keep their relationship intact had prevented him from being open. But now, the damage was done. The consequences of his silence were now real, and the cheerleader was left to grapple with the uncertainty of her own health. The weight of that diagnosis was crippling for her. The fear of what was to come in terms of her health, combined with the betrayal she felt, drove a wedge between them. But that wasn't the only thing that threatened to unravel their lives. Not long after, the cheerleader found herself facing another devastating reality. She was pregnant. The pregnancy sent shockwaves through their already fragile world. It was a bombshell neither had expected. The coach was thrown into a panic. He was already carrying the heavy weight of his HIV status, but now, the added responsibility of an unplanned pregnancy complicated everything further. What would people say? How would they explain the relationship? And most importantly, what would they do about the child? The cheerleader, overwhelmed with fear and uncertainty, didn't know what to do. She was scared of the implications for her future, for the judgment she would face from her family, her friends, and the community. At the same time, she knew she couldn't go through this alone, especially with the coach, the man she had trusted so deeply, now caught in the same storm. As the news of the pregnancy spread in hushed tones throughout the school, the pressure on both of them mounted. The whispers, the rumors. Soon, there was no escaping the reality that their secret was no longer a secret. The once tight-knit community was beginning to turn slowly but surely. Some were sympathetic, others were outraged, but all of them were talking. And then came the moment when it all became too much for the coach. The weight of his HIV diagnosis, combined with the pregnancy, created a perfect storm that he couldn't control. His secret life, once protected by careful lies and hidden moments, was collapsing. What was once an affair built on secrecy and tension was now spiraling out of control. The coach knew that their lives were about to change in ways they couldn't predict, and no matter what decisions they made moving forward, their lives would never be the same. The confrontation was inevitable. The secrets they had been keeping, the forbidden relationship, the pregnancy, and the coach's HIV-positive diagnosis, had created an unbearable tension. It was no longer something they could hide. The cheerleader, young and overwhelmed, began demanding answers. She wanted to know what the future would hold for her and the child she was now carrying. Was the coach prepared to take responsibility? What about the risks he had knowingly exposed her to by hiding his diagnosis? These questions hung heavy over every conversation. The final confrontation took place on a quiet, ordinary evening. The two met away from prying eyes in a secluded area where no one could interrupt. Witnesses would later recall seeing the cheerleader leave her house looking anxious, clutching her phone as if summoning the courage for what was to come. The coach arrived shortly after, his demeanor calm but visibly tense. Their voices, though distant from anyone else, could be heard rising. The cheerleader's frustrations spilled over, anger, fear, and betrayal in every word. She accused him of manipulating her, of hiding the truth about his diagnosis, and of leaving her to face the consequences of their actions alone. The coach, desperate to maintain control of the situation, tried to calm her down, but the damage was done. No one will ever know the exact sequence of events in those final moments, but the results were catastrophic. In the heat of the argument, something snapped. A sudden, violent altercation ensued, leaving the cheerleader fatally injured. The crime scene would later tell a chilling story. Blood splatter, signs of a struggle, and a weapon, likely grabbed in desperation, used to deliver the fatal blow. The location of the murder became a place of horror. Under the cover of darkness, the coach attempted to conceal what had happened. He wiped down surfaces, moved the cheerleader's body, and discarded the weapon in a nearby wooded area. His actions showed not just panic, but a calculated attempt to erase any evidence linking him to the crime. For a brief moment, the coach believed he could keep his secret. He sent a series of text messages from the cheerleader's phone, pretending she was alive and making plans to leave town. He even attended practices as if nothing had happened, maintaining a facade of normalcy. But cracks in his story began to show almost immediately. Friends and family noticed the cheerleader's uncharacteristic silence. She wasn't responding to calls or texts. Her absence from school was unexplainable, and her family quickly reported her missing. The coach's carefully constructed alibi began to crumble as investigators pieced together her final movements. Surveillance footage, eyewitness accounts, and inconsistencies in his story all pointed back to him. It wasn't long before the truth of what had happened that night began to surface, leading to one of the most shocking discoveries the community had ever faced. When the murder was discovered, the town's illusion of safety shattered overnight. The scene itself was haunting. Evidence of a violent struggle painted a chilling picture, but there were no immediate answers. The cheerleader's body, bruised and lifeless, was found in a secluded area far from where she was last seen. Her death was clearly no accident, but the why and how remained a mystery. Detectives began piecing together the timeline, starting with interviews. Her family described her as a bright, ambitious girl with a promising future, but even they admitted she had recently seemed distracted, withdrawn, and secretive. Her friends hesitated at first, but soon, bits of the puzzle emerged. A connection between the cheerleader and her coach that no one wanted to believe. When questioned, the coach denied any wrongdoing. He described their relationship as professional, claiming he had only ever mentored her like any other student. Yet his demeanor raised eyebrows. He seemed nervous, evasive, and defensive. Police noted inconsistencies in his statements, and rumors of a deeper relationship began to surface. As investigators delved deeper, a disturbing picture emerged. Forensic evidence from the crime scene revealed key clues: hair fibers, fingerprints, and signs of DNA that pointed to the coach's presence. Coupled with text messages recovered from the cheerleader's phone, it became clear they had been in frequent contact in the weeks leading up to her death. The tone of these exchanges varied. Some were affectionate, while others hinted at arguments and mounting tension. One message in particular stood out, sent just hours before her death. It read, "We need to talk. I can't do this anymore. You promised things would be different." This message, combined with eyewitness accounts of the two meeting the evening she disappeared, placed the coach under intense scrutiny. Investigators also uncovered the coach's secret HIV-positive status, which he had concealed from nearly everyone in his life. This revelation added another layer of complexity to the case, as it suggested both a motive and a possible reason for the escalating conflict between him and the cheerleader. Despite this mounting evidence, there were challenges. The coach's legal team argued that the relationship was consensual and that he had no reason to harm her. They suggested alternative suspects, pointing to classmates who had expressed jealousy over her prominence on the cheerleading squad or her pregnancy. Some in the community rallied behind the coach, insisting he was being framed. Detectives faced a web of misdirection, but a key piece of evidence changed everything. A blood stain on the coach's vehicle, confirmed to belong to the cheerleader. This discovery eliminated any plausible deniability. The trial captivated the nation, with media outlets descending on the small town to cover the unfolding drama. In the courtroom, emotions ran high as witnesses recounted the cheerleader's life and the events leading up to her death. Her parents gave heartbreaking testimonies describing the devastation of losing their daughter and their shock at learning about her relationship with the coach. The prosecution painted the coach as a manipulative predator who had abused his position of power and acted in desperation when the cheerleader threatened to expose their relationship. They argued that his fear of losing his reputation, combined with his guilt over hiding his diagnosis, drove him to commit the ultimate crime. The defense, however, focused on casting doubt. They portrayed the cheerleader as emotionally volatile and suggested that her death might have been an accident during an argument. They challenged the reliability of the forensic evidence and claimed there was no concrete proof the coach intended to harm her. One of the most gripping moments came when a forensic expert testified about the blood stain in the coach's vehicle and the timeline it corroborated. Another was the cheerleader's best friend breaking down on the stand as she revealed how the victim had confided in her about the relationship, her fear of the coach, and her plans to come forward. The final blow to the defense came when the coach's own text messages were read aloud in court. In one, he wrote, "If anyone finds out, it's over for me. I can't lose everything over one mistake." As the jury deliberated, the town held its breath, divided between those who believed the coach was guilty and those who couldn't fathom such a betrayal. After days of deliberation, the jury returned with their decision. The courtroom was silent as the foreperson read the verdict, the weight of the decision resting on every word. The investigation faced immediate hurdles. Detectives had to sift through the cheerleader's personal life, which revealed a stark divide between her public persona and private struggles. Friends spoke of her growing distance and occasional mood swings, but no one suspected the magnitude of her troubles. Rumors about her relationship with the coach surfaced early, but many dismissed them as baseless gossip, until investigators started digging deeper. The coach, initially cooperative, became a person of interest when inconsistencies emerged in his alibi. He claimed to have been at home the evening of the murder, but phone records and witness statements contradicted this, placing him near the scene. Detectives obtained warrants to search his vehicle and residence, uncovering crucial evidence: clothing with suspicious stains, a broken piece of jewelry matching the cheerleader's, and a hidden cell phone containing incriminating text messages. The forensics team played a pivotal role in cracking the case. DNA evidence found at the scene confirmed physical contact between the coach and the cheerleader. Blood spatter analysis suggested a violent confrontation, and fingerprints left on a weapon near the body provided the smoking gun. Additionally, the coach's HIV-positive status was a vital lead. Medical records revealed that he had been diagnosed years earlier, but had failed to disclose this information to anyone, raising suspicions about his motives and the escalating tensions between him and the cheerleader. Investigators also uncovered a trove of digital evidence. Text messages painted a damning picture of their secret relationship. In the days leading up to her death, the cheerleader had sent increasingly desperate messages to the coach, demanding answers about her pregnancy and his diagnosis. In one particularly chilling text, she warned, "If you don't come clean, I will." The tone of the coach's replies shifted from dismissive to threatening, hinting at the mounting pressure he felt to keep their secrets hidden. The trial was as explosive as the investigation. Prosecutors presented a compelling case, weaving together the physical evidence, digital footprint, and witness testimonies to paint a picture of a man driven to desperation. Emotional testimonies from the cheerleader's family brought the courtroom to tears as they spoke of the bright future stolen from her. The defense, however, tried to shift the narrative. They argued that the relationship, while inappropriate, was consensual, and suggested that the cheerleader's actions leading up to the confrontation might have been manipulative. They attempted to cast doubt on the timeline and question the reliability of the forensic evidence, but their arguments faltered against the overwhelming weight of the prosecution's case. After weeks of testimony and deliberation, the jury reached its decision. The coach was found guilty of murder, as well as charges related to endangerment due to his failure to disclose his HIV status. The sentence was severe, reflecting the community's outrage and grief over the loss of a young life. The trial's conclusion brought some closure, but for many, questions lingered. How had this tragedy gone unnoticed for so long? Could anyone have intervened sooner? And most haunting of all, what could have been done to save her? The aftermath of the murder left a scar that would never fully heal. For the cheerleader's family, grief was all-consuming. Her parents, who had always believed she was safe within the community, now struggled to reconcile their memories of their daughter with the tragic end she met. The revelation of her secret relationship with the coach added layers of guilt and anger. How had they missed the signs? How could someone they trusted betray their family so deeply? The coach's family faced their own struggles. While many in the community turned their anger toward him, his loved ones dealt with the shame of his actions and the ripple effects of his choices. His arrest and subsequent trial divided the town. Supporters clung to his past reputation, while others saw him as a manipulative predator who had abused his position of power. The school was forever changed. Teachers and students were haunted by what had happened right under their noses. Policies were overhauled, with stricter guidelines for student-teacher interactions, but it did little to mend the broken trust between parents and the institution. The trial's conclusion brought some closure but also raised more questions. The coach was sentenced to life in prison without parole, his actions deemed premeditated and cold-blooded by the jury. The unplanned pregnancy, the concealed HIV status, and the pressure of their secret relationship were all factors that came to light during the proceedings. His defense argued for leniency, claiming he acted in the heat of the moment, but the evidence presented left little room for doubt. The cheerleader's death became a grim symbol of the consequences of unchecked power dynamics. Advocates called for greater awareness and education about healthy relationships, particularly in environments where authority figures have undue influence over young people. The case sparked broader conversations nationwide. It shone a light on the dangers of power imbalances in relationships, particularly those involving authority figures and minors. The cheerleader's tragic story underscored the need for better communication, early intervention, and education about consent and boundaries. The revelation of the coach's HIV-positive status added another dimension to the case. It highlighted gaps in public understanding of HIV, the stigma still surrounding the condition, and the importance of disclosure and prevention. Health organizations used the case as a rallying cry for better outreach and awareness. Ultimately, the story left behind a legacy of lessons learned too late. It served as a reminder of the consequences of secrets, the fragility of trust, and the devastating ripple effects of one person's actions on an entire community. The story of the cheerleader and her coach is more than just a tragedy. It's a chilling reminder of the dangers of secrecy and unchecked power. It forces us to confront difficult truths. How do relationships built on power imbalances spiral into something destructive? Why do we ignore warning signs, even when they're right in front of us? And at what point does silence become complicity? In this case, the lack of accountability allowed a forbidden relationship to flourish in the shadows. The cheerleader's vulnerability and trust were exploited, and the coach's silence about his HIV-positive status turned that trust into a fatal risk. Their hidden truths didn't just alter their lives, they shattered families, devastated a community, and ended with a life taken far too soon. As we reflect on this case, one haunting truth stands out. Secrets never stay buried. They grow, fester, and eventually surface, often with devastating consequences. The coach's choices, the cheerleader's silence, and the community's failure to intervene all played a role in this tragic ending. In the end, the secrets we hide don't just define us, they can destroy us. This is a story that leaves us with a profound sense of loss, not just for the life that was taken, but for all the opportunities to prevent this tragedy that were missed along the way. This case should serve as a wake-up call for all of us. It's a reminder to stay vigilant, to listen, and to intervene when something doesn't feel right. If you or someone you know is in a vulnerable situation, speak up. Advocate for better education on power dynamics, relationships, and HIV awareness in schools and communities. And most importantly, let's ensure that the lessons from this story aren't forgotten. Share this video to spread awareness, leave your thoughts in the comments, and consider how we can all work to create safer spaces for those who need it most. If you found this story compelling, please like the video, subscribe to True Crime Unseen, and hit the notification bell so you never miss another chilling true crime story. Thank you for watching.